call it loo roll? Okay, it's convenient. That's the job. Is it B, some amazing recycled, kind of made out of corn products, something that came in an Amazon box yesterday? Or is it C, a sock?
I'm going to say.
Have to hurry.
I'm going to say. I want to say sock because that'd be the easy low-hanging fruit. But as you've mentioned the Amazon material science, I want to go down that route. I'm going to go with the Amazon material science route.
You're going to go for B?
Yes.
Never go for B. Of course it was C. It's always a sock.
Damn it.
You see, you fell into it.
I did fall into
the
it.
temptation of the middle option because it sounded plausible.
It did sound plausible, and I was intrigued.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
so
and in my mind, I had my entire lounge covered in the stuff for sound absorption reasons.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, but it's not what I used. So it would have been more practical, in my opinion. Maybe it's with a bit of regret that I thought I'd share that with you, but I still want to kind of enforce this idea here.
A sock is very good, yes.
Thank you. You've started this geek salad, right? It's based on a poor pun, let's be honest. Ill-advised idea. But nonetheless, I still think that we have to define exactly what a geek is. Now, I think we know mainly what salad is. I think we can all agree that we know roughly what salad is. But geek, I'm not sure whether that is a term or that could be perceived offensive. I'm not sure that that's something that could maybe... It seems to be kind of cool nowadays, but has that got any kind of negative context? Do you think?
I don't mind being called that. It's kind of what I am, really, isn't it? I mean, you could call me a nerd or a geek or whatever you like. I mean, the geek shall inherit the earth, Hodge. This is the fact. This is, I mean, and in COVID times, I think...
it's proved to be the Norton One wranglers there.
Yeah, we seem to be having yes. Yes, what's the saying? In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Is that what they say?
Indeed, it is. That is exactly what they say, man.
Yes. So I mean, all I'm saying is a bit wrangling does not hurt you in these lockdown times, and actually, nice things come out of it to a larger extent.
I think the station's fantastic, man. I mean, not only did it sort of give like numerous people and still continues to give numerous people things to do, which is like pretty damn awesome. But it also kind of got your good self there, Matthew Smith, into not the spotlight per se, but a lot of people don't know what it is, what you do.
Well, this is the thing. I think that's the same for any technology, any tech sort of stuff. It's like, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm in IT. Well, that's, okay. Everyone's in IT.
Genie in a box.
Yes, it's like, well, yeah.
And
why should people know that? Like, I don't know the intricacies of metallurgy or...
Do you want to have a little peek? Do you want to see how it all works behind the scenes? Some people don't. Some people just want to prefer to think.
Yeah. But I certainly think that because the trouble I think you have these days is there's so many large corporations that are taking standards away from things like the internet and building proprietary things, and people don't understand how things work, and things are deliberately black boxes that not only can you not
shaped screws.
Exactly. Not only can you not be curious about because it's not obvious what they're doing, but they're actually obfuscated. They're taking that away from you. I mean, when I was growing up, you had the home computer, which was something that had a keyboard and you could make it do stuff. You can't do that anymore.
And
you can't do that anymore.
Encouraged to open the back and swap things around.
Absolutely, yeah, and learn how it works, and you can see how it works. I mean, that's a double-edged sword as well, because a web browser is an open thing. Anyone can do anything with a web browser, but I mean,
and a lot of people do.
This is very true. Like build radio stations out of them. But yeah, I mean, so that's true. So you can argue from that point of view. And of course, the technology, the tech is unimaginable because computers are so powerful now. You just things that you would have thought even 15 years ago. Well, I can't. That would be great. I can see how that could be done, but then nothing will be anywhere near powerful enough. That's just not true anymore. Like you can. I mean, what at the moment we've got character animations. We've got 3 computers involved. A web camera is watching my mouth move while another machine records it, and I can see now that my computer is using about 2% of its capacity. It's insane. It is absolutely extraordinary. I only bought this computer this year because I haven't found the need to upgrade for about 9 years because it.
Oh man! So you've upgraded. You've taken the leap
recently, purely because probably because I just felt it was time. 10 years is long enough to have a PC, isn't it? And I just thought,
wow.
Not bad
lifespan.
But to be honest with you, was it worth the investment? Probably not. I mean, it might be going forward, but at this moment in time, was it worth? Am I much better off than I was? Not really.
No.
But that's
but it's sort of an essential tool of the trade, isn't it? It's a hammer, man. You've got to be able to hammer those noughts and ones, and so therefore you need something to hammer it with. It's a tool. It's a tool of the trade, Matthew Smith. But I don't. You go a lot deeper down than I do. But that's kind of putting it back to the geek word. I think that there's also this kind of like misinterpretation that it might be to do with comics, or it might be to do with superheroes, or it might be to do with train spotting even. There's this kind of like sort of odd, slightly misanthropic's the wrong word, but interest an almost innate interest in something that a lot of people find baffling and complicated.
Yes.
I think that also maps itself, because effectively a computer is really a few switches times a million, and now it's grown into a neural network. So we make things like Frankenstein, pretty rough versions of ourselves. And so I think that people like yourself are naturally wired into it, you know, whereas I struggle a little bit like someone who can speak a bit of French.
Is that true? I don't know, because I think that sort of the literacy that you have with it is interesting to me, because you see things that I wouldn't see from an aesthetic point of view, I think. And so you'll see potentials that I wouldn't, like this whole animation thing. I mean, that was you could see that, but I think that's also part of the whole geeky thing, if you like. It's not necessarily always just about the nuts and bolts. It's about seeing. You can see immediately that something can be done. You know, you can see an application or a utility, and you can almost see that there is. You can tell in a second whether something is a solvable problem or not, or you at least know how to investigate whether it is.
Absolutely.
Whatever you might be doing, or you can see potential for doing something where there was none. You know.
Well, I think it's like I mean, I don't personally play computer games. I don't do that. I haven't done since like Chucky. Man, I'm old. Do you know what I mean? I just write my own rubbish ones. But it's because the computer is the game, Matthew Smith. The computer.
Yeah, well, I'm similar to you in that regard. I mean, I might spin up a game occasionally and go, "Wow, these graphics are amazing," and I do like to have vintage stuff around, but that's more of a nostalgia thing. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's more of a nostalgia.
People probably don't know that you also build arcade boxes, because you're.
Yeah, but again, I've never really been into arcades. But the fact that you can have 7,000 arcade machines ranging from 1976 to 1995 in one box.
What's the first one? Do you remember?
The first would be Pong, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, as a ROM, in literally, I think the first idea of a visual game was Pong in the 50s, was it, on an oscilloscope based on the Nazi code for mapping missiles, I believe.
Was it really? Someone figured out that you could play a game on it. I mean, there's all sorts of things going on in the early PDPs and things, I suppose. But everyone likes the game. I think probably adventure games, like, you know, sort of text-based north, south, east, west type games. Yeah, were probably around before that.
There is a curious beast.
Yes.
I always thought they'd come back when we started SMSing, text messaging. I thought that'd be like something that would re-hit. But like everything in my life, I was totally wrong. Matthew Smith.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Came along.
Mind you, there's still graphical adventures out there. There's lots of old. You can using an internet protocol, Telnet. There's lots of Telnet servers. Telnet's just a text protocol like you would have on the old modems that you
dial-up.
So that's the modern equivalent of dial-up. Yeah,
and
modern equivalent of dial-up
would be the equivalent of, would you say, the internet under the internet under the internet? The idea of going at least peer to peer.
Well, I think of a lot of stuff is like the old BBS, which is your old bulletin boards, which used to work off of telephone line analog modems, and I think they've just got a new interface on. You know, just the protocols bit on the front is still RS-232 essentially is what they're talking, which is the serial communications that you would have chatted with them over TCP/IP, which is how the internet works.
And TCP being packaging, I believe.
Yes, transmission control internet protocol, which is what everything's based around. That how the world works, how we're able to be broadcasting to you. Well, it's a switching protocol. That's the idea. So it was developed by DARPA in the which is the American Defense. The idea being that you could it was yeah, of course. Like, it's always the driver, isn't it? War, porn, or food is always the the driver in these things.
Or even Galileo, certainly, when he was developing his lenses for use in his personal interest, which was astronomy, looking at the stars and that. He was funded by the Navy, who would very much like to see the ships coming a bit closer so that they could prepare. So there is a solid, whether you like it or not as a pacifist, there is a solid
of course. That's where the money is. It's where the money is, and that's how it trickles down.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's that, and there's also food, things like fast food, especially.
Yeah, people's got to eat, right?
Yeah. And pornography is another one, because you wouldn't have had the driver for say internet video without or even pictures. Like, that was the driver behind it.
Let's put it back in history. 1885, I believe it was Fox Talbot. I'm bad at names and numbers, so it's roughly about there. Who was pioneered the idea of negative kind of photography, where you put it on negative, shine it through, and you make a positive. That was the birth of what we consider to be modern day technology photography until digital came along. So that was the standard norm, invented in 1885. His assistant pretty much went, can I borrow that? And that
Right.
was the first case of pornography.
Right.
So it was literally one generation of, and bless him, Fox
Yeah.
Talker, he was a gentleman. He was wonderful. Well, what can I use this for? I'm going to take some nice landscapes. That's a nice house. And his assistant goes, excuse me, he was French, coincidentally. And can I borrow that for a little bit? Bought it back, you know, a bit icky, and thus we're here now. It's
Absolutely. Well, I mean, look at the first films that were being made. They were always risque, you know.
Pretty saucy.
Yeah.
You know,
indeed.
the first ever considered to be filmed adverts would be.
And do you not, sir? What would that be?
Way back. I can't remember the name of the duo. They were a British duo who were kind of working about 2 or 3 years after Lumiere and the Lumiere brothers, and they were bringing these pioneering machines to villages. Clever, right? Filming the village or town the day before, and then projecting it the day after to all the people in it. Now, isn't that clever? What
Wow.
a clever way to interpret, before they've even invented the language of film, what a clever way to interpret it. Very modern, almost, right? And they suddenly realised they can monetize it
Right.
by simply paying, and it was a local distillery, and it was Scotch whiskey. And it involved, I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere if you Google it, but it involved what you could probably call a slightly crass interpretation of what a Scotsman would be. If you were around in the 1980s, I think Russ Abbott was still carrying that card, but nonetheless it evidently goes back for at least 125 years, because it was that dude dancing around to a big picture of the bottle.
Right.
And, you know, and so a pioneer in advertising, and I believe the first television advert ever shown in England was Colgate toothpaste.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
How about that?
So that was probably tied in with the concept of the soap opera. Was that an American
Well, the soap
idea? Was
opera
it?
yes, it grew from how the hell are we going to sell the products,
Yeah.
And so the idea of a cliffhanger to promote Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
And the
Of course, you'd have needed independent television first, because the BBC wouldn't have done that sort of thing.
Well, the BBC, you see, they had the Reithian ethos, which was basically Charles Reith, and he was old school, man, and they decided this television's coming along, we're going to manage it, we're going to get a little license. And so they sent Charles Reith to America, where like commercial TV had already kicked in, and he saw it and went, fuck that shit. I paraphrase. I'm sorry, didn't he? Said, I bid you good day, America. And then he came back here, popped his top hat off, and replaced his broken monocle, and came up with the Reithian ethos that was to inform, educate, and entertain.
Indeed.
And so they stuck very rigidly to this, the BBC, until independent television came along, which I believe the 56s. I wasn't there at the time. And then it all kind of, went a bit left field. And now I believe the Reithian ethos is snog, marry, avoid. I'm not quite sure, but we still pay the license fee, or at least allegedly. And, it's not a bad thing. It kind of does a good little job there.
That's progress for you. Right. Should we have a little bit of music? Let's have a little bit of music.
People appreciate that hugely.
This is something that someone sent in. This is Magic Dietrich with a song called Magic 7. It's quite good. This, have a go.
stars never seen the light that you don't see, to put a hand upon your shoulder when you don't hear or think or see. For centuries ever I came to you and had no reply, but kept on pushing, pulling, controlling thee.
07762 208 068. That's 07762 208 068.
That is when we are live, of course, which we are at the moment. No point doing that for on YouTube. Although we might, if you wanted to email studio@bigbubble.uk, we will investigate your question and probably come up with a wrong answer. Maybe.
I imagine so.
Oh, that reminds me. Actually, last week we had a nice question from I think it was Paula, asked about Wall of Sound, Mr. Spector.
Phil Spector died.
Yeah, Phil Spector died recently. Strange
A
fellow.
contentious but doubtless influential character.
Absolutely, yeah. Bit of a nut, but
Yeah, he'd be crazy.
He'd be crazy.
Entrapped George Harrison into a lawsuit by kind of accidentally making him plagiarise. But also, yeah, the Wall of Sound, which is the same kind of ABBA did it later on. And
yeah, I think the question was how was it done actually. So I had to
right.
dig around, right? And I think basically, I think a lot of people think it's like just turning everything up to 11 and putting lots of sound, but that's not what's happening at all.
I imagine overdubs, yeah.
Yeah, so it's lots of overdubs. But so you'd have quite simple parts. So you might have like a piano part, and then you would say overdub that very exactly with a different instrument, so like a harpsichord or a Rhodes piano or something, and then very gently mix them together, and then multiply that to everything there, including the vocals and guitars. And guitars would be overdubbed, but the same parts, just subtly mixed to build up this great big wall of sound. Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of this is pre-compression as well. So, so compression, for people who don't know, is where you can limit what a sound does. So it goes above a certain volume, you can squash it down. That's putting it very simply, but essentially most modern music is produced
below
on
a certain volume,
you can push it up. Yeah.
Well, I know that they experimented with the Decatree, or the Decatriangle, which is
a way of placing microphones.
Way of placing microphones to kind of get rid of the bounce and stuff and try to get fuller room. But yeah, basically layering drums on top of drums on top of drums, layering flutes on top of flutes, layering suitable harmonic instruments on top of each other that are suited to the frequency of recording, as well as the melody and the harmony. It's pretty much how the Wall of Sound thing works, and then not paying anyone, obviously, and taking all the credit. And you know, thus a genre was born. And it's a very distinctive sound, kind of like it, man. But yeah, ABBA did the same thing. Always 2 drum tracks at least on ABBA.
Yeah, I mean, my limited knowledge in the studio, I do similar things, but I mean, not quite the same, because that is very much playing the same parts in unison with different tones, isn't it? Like one of my favourite tricks in the studio is
between arrangement, creativity, and technology, and
yeah. I mean, I like to personally, for recording guitar parts, it's like I might take a normal guitar and then play the same part on a baritone guitar, and then play the same part on a 12-string or a Nashville tune guitar. But that's not the same thing at all, because that is playing different octaves. It's sort of isn't, isn't it? You know,
it's still creating layers. It's not necessarily a wall of sound. You do the same thing if you laid those guitar parts down twice each, and then played a secondary kind of octave under and over, then it's sort of getting more like it.
And of course, the other thing with that at the time was you had limited tracks. I mean, you were talking, if you had 8-track, you'd be lucky then. And I imagine the early stuff would have been 4-track, wouldn't it? So you'd have to get it right and then bounce it down to bounce the track. So you've only got 4 tracks. What you have to do is you can record 3 tracks, and at that point you've run out of tracks unless you bounce one down. So you take all 3 tracks, you get the mix, but the mix would have to be exactly right. Put it onto the 4th track, and then that frees up your other 3 tracks. But of course,
you've committed.
You've committed. Then you've printed it. You are then set in stone. Whereas these days, I can in my little studio in my lounge, I can have I don't know. I've never pushed it beyond sort of 70, but I guess I could triple that.
You don't need 70 tracks.
No, you wouldn't.
On bounce downs.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't need 70 tracks. But I've done it to see whether it would work.
They have an orchestra. I'll give them that.
Yeah, but even that, you wouldn't mic every instrument in an orchestra. That would just be making far too much. Do people do that? That would be insane, wouldn't it?
But yes, they do.
Do
They're kind of forced into it, yeah.
Blimey.
Mainly for broadcast. If you're broadcasting a hall, I noticed that.
Would you not mic a section? No?
We do so. But I've noticed, just do a mic count. They're well hidden, but you'll find that if you're watching something from back in live performance days, from the Royal Albert Hall, there's an awful lot of augmentation going on, and a lot of that's to broadcast the sound out of the building to us. But yeah, it's not just 3. Although from experience, I've done sound engineering a few times in Canterbury Cathedral. Good gig, man.
Wow.
Rubbish music, but that's just in my opinion. But it's a great venue. And I use the same rig that the BBC does to do, sort of various, things they do at the cathedral, like what would it be, New Church of England do? I'm not very good at religion, and they only use a setup of about 8 mics.
Right.
Yeah.
And where would they be?
They're kind of crossed in the corners, and they've got details by the organ, and they've got some detail mics on the front.
Okay.
But they're still like the 1970s BBC old school mics. They haven't updated them.
Wow.
And that's fantastic, and I hope they still are. They certainly were last year when I was in there. And that's.
I've actually just bought a 1962 Reslo ribbon microphone, and it worked as well, which is interesting.
That means you're going to get fantastic sound. You get paid far too much money.
Yeah, okay. That was the other thing with.
But it's authentic. Put it in the bathroom and create a proper reverb chamber.
Yeah, well, that must be something like Canterbury Cathedral. That must be both the blessing and the curse. Must be the reverb of it. I mean, I guess
17-second decay.
Wow.
And, I think I timed it once. If you've got stillness.
So in a room that size, it being full of bodies or not makes a difference, or?
Oh yeah, hugely. Man.
Yeah.
I once accidentally did the house lights for Canterbury Cathedral, and it worked. It was kind of cool. I was recording at the back, and they got like sort of plugs hidden in various places, and one of them was taken up with a plug, just 13-amp plug, that had been turned off. And so I thought, right, that's fine. I can unplug that without risk. I have permission to be here.
Right.
And so I unplug it, and I plug in my rig, and I turn it on, and all is good. And I'm videoing and recording. And at the end of the gig, they say, thank you very much, and now, photos and please, it never quite finishes. In a religious ceremony, they go, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, good night. They don't do that.
Drop the microphone, yeah.
No, there's no mic drops there. It's just like everyone shuffles awkwardly and gives their hand to the Lord. And so I think, right, okay, very quietly, I'm going to unplug my kit and then plug that thing back in.
Yeah.
But I forgot to turn the mains off. And it turned out that I actually plugged in the whole of the scaffolding lights throughout the whole of the cathedral, the whole of the internal scaffolding lights.
What, off of
and
one,
the whole place
off of one
lit
socket?
Up.
Was it like
the whole of Canterbury Cathedral lit up?
Was it like a 16-amp socket or?
Mate, yeah. It's just overdriving to whatever. And I lit up the whole of Canterbury. And the weirdest thing is, everyone got up and left. I thought, just did the house lights. And then I ran away because there was a furious rector there. And it happens. If they didn't mention it, they're Christians, I just like, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no one wants a furious rector, do they?
Well, no, but I like to think that I have brought literal light to a place of religion just by being there and being a bit sloppy.
Very good. Just going back to the Phil Spector thing, that was something else that came up when I was reading about that. Apparently, they were not keen on the whole stereo soundstage thing.
Well, no.
But going back to committing to your mix, because you would have made the mix the way you wanted it. When you start throwing stereo into things, and that then gives the sort of end user. It depends on where you've put your speakers and where you're sitting in relation to those speakers as to what the mix is going to sound like, obviously, which kind of takes it away from the producer.
It makes it more chaotic, and so therefore it puts another gate in the way of what they imagined.
Of what they,
recording as well at this point, right?
Oh, of course.
So
I love stereo recordings. I wouldn't want to go back to mono ones, but isn't that interesting that had that pushback? And Brian Wilson, I believe, at the same time, was a similar sort of thought that this was not such a good thing to be doing.
Harrison as well,
right. Because all the early Beatles stuff was mono, wasn't it? And then it was remixed later on, wasn't it?
And when they went into stereo, they split it. They kind of like went, okay, we'll put the bass and drums over here, we'll put the vocals over here, and then you can kind of mix it. They're like sort of almost going, make it, okay, if you want to mix it, mix it. So people could kind of fine tune it. It was almost like that record kind of gave birth to the audiophile being allowed permission to change things about a bit and settle them for their ears. It's pretty cool. But and then, forward wind about 20, 25 years, that's all, and you start getting filters on your stereos that are putting a load of bass on and stuff like that, and that was infuriating as producers.
Yeah, well, records. I think there's the RAA standard, isn't there? Which is the American standard, but I think it's worldwide. Which is that is the roll-off. That is every turntable has an EQ curve, doesn't it?
Yes.
But that it's supposed to adhere to, because obviously, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ige, I think you're not getting as much bass out of a record player as you would like. So
the bass is wider curve, and so therefore,
essentially it boosts the bottom. And strips off the top, but of course you can only put so much bass within a groove of a record, otherwise the needle will start jumping out, which is probably the main reason for it, isn't it? So everything is made with this EQ curve that is fixed on a record, but records still sound great. I think they sound great.
Well, they do, but the bass also being a wider groove, right? Because it's a bigger, sort of frequency. It quietens and disperses actual volume.
Indeed, it does.
And I forget the producer of in the 1950s who did all the novelty tracks in America. How much is that doggy in the window? They were hugely successful because he had no passion for music whatsoever. and he realised if he took the bass off that it'd be a 30% louder, and so they sold by the bucket load because they were louder.
Yes,
Not necessarily because they were better.
And of course, on a record that spirals into the centre, your bandwidth actually goes down as the record progresses. And there's been some argument in the classical world for some years that you should actually start a record. Record should go the other way
Inside
around.
out.
Yeah, because you've got less bandwidth at the front, and a lot of classical music starts quietly and ends with a crescendo at the end. Well, you need the most bandwidth for that. So really, you want to start in the middle and then come out to the side. But anyway, that's that.
Weird, isn't it?
Right, talking of music, let's have another track, shall we, Arch? I'm going to play one by one of my bands because I am
One of your bands.
one of my bands.
You have multiple bands.
Yes. This is Badoo.
That's the way it's been, pervasive and invisible with your digital morphine. Somebody has your line, somebody has your line, somebody has your line, over again.
Oh, double Sim!
622 08068. Yeah. That's the number to text. So what you're listening to Geek Salad with Matt and IJ. This is an experimental little show that we're doing here. In between
experiment
shows.
in sleep apnea, I believe. And actually, I mean that in a very good way. I think that, if people do find this something that is impenetrable that gets you to sleep, I say, job done, my friend.
There you
I
go.
say, let's not invest in stocks in Nitol here. Let's just listen to this show, right? And see if it doesn't sort of drop you over the curve and into the arms of Morpheus.
Well, that would be
where we
nice.
need to land,
I was saying to you just now, while that song was playing, I'm having terrible trouble sleeping at the moment. It's just there doesn't seem to be much of a pattern going on, does there? That's the trouble I'm having, and it's
It's like living in a cave, and but also it's it's kind of seasonal as well. But that's why it's nice to have a chat in that, isn't it? And hopefully
absolutely.
Yeah, it's certainly waking me up, and then a little bit boring. I mean, I do bore myself in my own company, but as yet we haven't got full Wilson, if you will. I seem to remember drawing faces on things and having discussions in the last lockdown, and they were starting to get surprised.
Was that lockdown '83? Was that? I can't remember.
I can't remember, man. But it was quite interesting. My toothbrush had a backstory about being a fighter pilot in the Second World War, and I thought, right, that's the time. It's gone too far. That was my Alf. Sadly widowed in the 50s. It was a tragedy. Never remarried.
Really?
Man. Yeah. And that was me toothbrush. And so if you start drawing faces on things and discussing them, then that's when you need to ring someone up, right? Just say it. If you have the facility to do so.
Yeah, I can see that.
And sort of share a bit of company and stuff, and it's tough, man.
Yes, say the chap's sitting there looking at cartoon versions of themselves on a green screen.
Yeah,
yes,
there's nothing Freudian about that at all.
Not at all. Not
No.
at
I suppose we
all.
have expunged our scribbles onto the world,
There you go.
and therefore maybe that is some kind of therapy for us.
Yes,
And,
some sort of catharsis.
Yes, which I
if
think
you will.
Is basically a wank fest, and therefore people should unsubscribe straight away. But, so.
Yes.
Again, unbiased.
Well, don't unsubscribe. Do subscribe, because that's why we want this YouTube channel to be subscribed.
Just throw away your YouTube channel. We don't need any of this stuff. I say that,
It's the wrong message. It's the
I
wrong.
know, I know.
He's gone off message. He's gone off message. Stephen, he's gone off message.
Okay, now, Mr. Graham, hear me out. We, of course, you don't unsubscribe because you love our lovely content, right? But nonetheless, the ethics behind it are curious, because you wrote this platform up to this point, Matthew Smith. You, Big Bubble, are effectively large corp agnostic. Is that not correct?
Well, we try to be. Yes. Yes.
And so, therefore, in order to communicate with the world, we now have to bridge, as anyone else would, the gap into social networking to allow people to know us. But nonetheless, we kind of avoided it on the setup side of it. So
We have, and we're a radio station, not a television station. This is more sort of about it's about sort of testing the water, really, isn't it? It's an interesting little project to see what you can do,
And a thing that maybe people don't understand, appreciate, or even have any interest in, is that yourself and Steve and various wonderful people invested in buying a license and working out how to actually do this, so that effectively the musicians we play will receive royalties and get paid.
Hopefully.
And I think that, within.
Unfortunately, there's no way to extend that to the world of social media. It's a closed shop. It's wrapped up. Forget it.
No, we can't have any known songs for more than 3 seconds on there, which is
No, and we can't even do a listen again thing. I'd like to be able to do that, but we just can't do it.
No, because of the license and rules. But we have to play, and so spoken word is kind of an interesting way around that. But it's like whether it'll appeal to people.
Well, it's a new one for Big Bubble, but then it's, you might just prefer to listen to Bubblebot, but we will see. We will see.
Bubblebot, it's going to take over the world, man. You know that.
Well, I think she's got ideas on things. This is
mate,
true.
it worries me, Matthew. It becomes sentient. How long does it take to reboot? When Bubblebot actually suddenly says, Bubblebot and Matthew friends, how long does it take to destroy that sentience and reboot Bubblebot in some kind of guarantee to plug that sentient moment state?
To be fair, mate, she's just quite a good-looking clock. That's all she is.
Okay, that's quite sinister. The fact that you find Bubblebot attractive indicates that you've already got some kind of relationship with this thing that you've created, Matthew. I fear for the future. No blood on your hands, dude. I'm not saying you like the guy who banged the bat. You know what I mean?
I don't know why everyone thinks it assumes it's a male. It's not. Well, it's probably non-gendered, but
I don't see bubble gender, man.
I prefer to think of her as a her.
As a her. That's interesting. Like that people refer to cars quite often in the family.
Right.
And just occasionally have sex with them.
Okay.
Right.
Back to the tech. Did you know that the Raspberry Pi Foundation? For anyone not aware, the Raspberry Pi make sort of cheap computers, really cheap single board computers. They're aimed at education, sort of like. sort of like aimed at education, aimed at little projects and things like that. You can pick one up for. Yeah, that's right. Because I was saying that we were saying earlier, weren't you, about how it's hard to get into tech these days because it's such a black box. The idea of that, it was made for that very reason, to allow people to experiment and all the rest of it, and a price that is affordable.
And have a look behind the curtain.
Yes. Anyway, they've just made themselves a microcontroller.
Oh, really? Well, like an Arduino.
Yes, like an Arduino, but that's sort of pin for pin compatible with a lot of the not that other stuff is, but pin for pin compatible with a lot of the Pis, and really cheap. I think it's. Well, depends how you want to. Yeah, depends how you want to program it. But it's actually. I thought this is how far the Raspberry Pi's come. It's actually based on their own silicon. It's not an app mount or a microchip. They've actually made their own silicon to do it by the looks of it. And you can buy. I think each board's coming in at about $4.
Really?
And you can buy them. And you can.
HDMI outs and everything.
No, it's not. No, it is just a microcontroller. So it's not that powerful, but I mean, whenever I do, I always find myself with a computer product using micros for either for inputs or whatever. Useful things.
Controllers are very useful.
They are extremely useful things.
They sort of do one job.
Arduino is probably the most accessible and known one. But also they're selling $4, but also you can buy it on a reel. So they'll come like you would like components would come on a reel. Yeah, so you can buy like 100 of them on a reel and have a pick and place machine, just going bim bim bim, or solder them up or whatever you want to do. That was really interesting, really curious, and it's quite a powerful micro by the looks of it. So interesting.
Probably about what the size of a credit card? Smaller.
Tiny. About the size of an Arduino board by the looks of it. I haven't actually seen one in the flesh, but yeah, about the same size as an Arduino board. But I think it's got like IEC. So I think on the edge it's got like, I'm not quite sure what the term is, but like sort of edge connectors. So the PCB are just plated on the edge, so you could just solder it straight to a board, sort of thing. Yeah. By the looks of it.
So you can kind of sort of hack a day a little bit and breadboard it and just kind of
yeah. So yeah, quite interesting. And of course the cheapest. What was the cheapest Raspberry Pi now? It's about, I think it's about £6 or £7, isn't it, for the Pi Zero, which is crazy.
So even in this world of vast poverty and expense, which let's be honest, there's a lot of people struggling with. It's been very difficult for a lot of people.
Absolutely,
but that is potentially, if someone's lucky enough to have access to the web and a debit card, a tenner or 15 quid. To start something that could lead to you building robots or building whatever you wanted, really.
Certainly, I mean, you could the Raspberry Pi. I think the actual what's it, the Pi 4 now. I'm a little bit out of touch with them, to be honest with you, but I think the Pi 4 is about 25 quid or something, if you can find them.
Should have gone for the Pi 3.14.
But that's
very disappointed that they did for the geekness.
Very good, yeah.
Quaff.
But
2 people laughed at that in the world.
Yeah, I would in a minute.
No. It's,
but I mean that is essentially a computer.
Right?
You can plug it into your television. You can plug a keyboard into it. It's a perfectly working computer. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's amazing stuff, man, and it's great to noodle with. I'm probably going to break one out that I got from a few years ago and see if I can't take the weight off this this kind of a designer's MacBook that I got open at the moment that's doing all the animation stuff. They're crazy. Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if there's not a solution there, because I mean, education is struggling at the moment, obviously, because everything's being done remotely. And if you think that you're in I mean, you worked in education for years, so you know how this works.
More than I was in education, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, the trouble you have is that not everyone has got access to laptops or things that they need to do. And if they have, even if you've got 4 kids in a house, like you've got one laptop, you're not going to have 4. Unless you're very well off, you're not going to have a laptop each, are you?
Well, the thing is, the tellies that you see skipped, as we live in this world of neoism, and you can buy a 60-inch flat panel for 200 quid. Can easily be a driver for a Raspberry Pi, and you can, and you'll find one. You could
technically, but then there is a little bit of a barrier to entry there, because if you don't have that, the nous to have, if you not the nous, but if you don't have a computer in your house, then you're not going to be able to set up a Raspberry Pi, are you? Probably not.
It's a bootstrap conundrum.
But if you were to think about it and get together and badge them up and ship them out, I mean, I know there's also been a big drive from some private companies to sort of get old laptops and refresh them and put them out there. I did loads for the school that we happened to have loads of those old netbooks, and I managed to refurb some of those. And some of them were coming from government, but even so, it's still a bit of a barrier to entry for people.
I think it's how we think about recycling.
Absolutely, and of course,
obsolescence.
What with a lot of stuff being done in the cloud as it is now, to say things like Google Docs and whatever.
Someone else's computer. The cloud.
All you really need is a machine that will boot up into a web browser, and you're away. That's all it's got to do, isn't it? Really.
Google offers, isn't it?
Which is a Chromebook. So there's various ways of doing that. But I see now, of course, that things like Linux are stopping supporting 32-bit operating systems, which is, computers of a certain vintage.
Sure, yeah.
Well, no, this is the thing. I think that the mainline Linux is starting to drop 32-bit support because I mean it's ancient now, isn't it? Why should you start? It's like
Sorry to interject there, Matthew, but I think I read, and I'm just wrong to a degree, but I think they dropped Flash, didn't they? Quite recently.
Thank God for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it crashed. Not only metaphorically. The playout system, as it were, for the organisation of, I believe it was the Indian Railway System.
Really?
Because they based it on Flash, and so they had to kind of work around all
why would
of
you?
the stuff kind of because they did, it worked.
Wow. Well, it worked. It
And
works.
isn't it eerie if you ever walk past a cash point machine, you see it on a Windows Server 2000 boot, or even a Windows 95 boot.
That's blue screen. Oh, you still see? I've seen NT4, I think, recently on a cash machine. Good grief. At least it was NT, I suppose.
I know
But
in the early O's, as I think they now call them, I knew that one of the large supermarkets was still being run on Windows 95 for all of their tills.
Wow.
Because they didn't dare not.
Yeah, I mean, for embedded stuff like that, companies like Microsoft will offer extended support. Not for Windows 95, I shouldn't think, but they certainly like.
No, it's probably
So I
outrageous.
think you can. I think there's probably some companies that have still got support for Windows 2000.
Yeah.
From Microsoft. It's a lot of money those things are worth. It's crazy.
Yeah, 21 years ago, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still booting up. Still booting up in the background. So
I had a server crash yesterday, and as I was fixing it, and I hadn't rebooted the server because it was a Windows 2016 server, or whatever it was. Anyway, I hadn't had any updates done for a while because it was in use all the time, and I daren't do that. If it wasn't working, it was backing stuff up, and this was a school again, so you make the most of your resources. Anyway, so it took me about 3/4 of an hour to fix the original problem that, admittedly, of my own creation, which was a gigabytes of disk space being used and stuff. Anyway, fixed all that. It then took an hour and a half for Windows to come back up after it did its updates. It's like, this is a production, and I know you should do your updates more frequently than that, but come on, guys, come on.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there, so you've solved all the problems. You're literally waiting for a Windows to boot itself up again. Crazy.
Would you feel slightly better if a Paperclip Man was reintroduced at that point and entertained you with some interesting sort of phrases?
What, some anecdotes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
like-
might just kind of enliven you during that strange stasis of not knowing how long this thing's going to take.
No clue, absolutely no clue. Yes. How long was it? It was like, fortunately, I wasn't. It was at the time of day where it wasn't too critical. But the last thing you want is management being there and going, "How long is this going to take?" And you've got to go, "I've got no fucking clue."
Well, so the one way to find out actually is for me to do it, and then I'll tell you.
We will. I'll tell you when it starts serving services again, Like being a server. Shall we have one more song before we go?
If we've got time, Matthew Smith, why the hell not?
I think we have. We should have some Mr. Bill Clift.
I'm familiar with his work.
He sent us an album, which is really good, isn't it? Let's have a go at this. This one's called Austin. This is Bill Clift from The Best of Bill Clift.
Up to here with whatever morning brings. I'm tied up and weighed down and now I wanna spread my wings. How long can I go on leading myself up the garden path? I'm stretching my credit and I'm faking my laugh. The only way to make it worth staying alive is driving a car down Route 35. Get to Austin. Nobody there is gonna stop me having fun. I feel a brick wall and there's nowhere left to run, so I gotta get to Austin. As soon as I get there, I'm gonna cast a line. As I get out of this place, I'm gonna feel fine. How many times am I gonna have to suffer a love that fails? How many times so I have to find a girl with a heart full of 9-inch nails. The only kind of woman I ever want to meet is sure to be down on the Beacon Street, and I gotta get to Austin. She may be crazy, but it's so plain to see she's the kind of woman that was meant for me, and I gotta get to Austin. This is the best I've felt in about 6.5, maybe 7, maybe 8 years. I sell everything and disconnect the phone. I've never been to Texas, but it already feels like home. The folk in the broken spoke of good people. They greet you as a brother and they treat you like an equal. And I've gotta get to Austin. Gotta get to Austin. Birds and fastball bands that I love are gonna play the 7-night stands. I gotta get to Austin. Gotta get to Austin. The only way to make it worth staying alive is driving in a car down Route 35, and I gotta get to Austin. Gotta get to Austin. Oh, I gotta get to Austin.
That's a lovely track. That's Austin by Mr. Bill Clift.
Austin, I assume the place and not like a distant relative.
Yes, listening to the lyrics, it was about the place. Oops, I just dropped something on the floor. Yes, sorry about that. Yes, well, we're nearly out of time, Ige. Where did that go?
Wow, well, I'd imagine it felt like an awful long time for a lot of people, but time is relative, after all. And
you wait till you see our funky little character animated faces.
Yes, Moog. What a treat.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I've got 5 minutes, got to wrap up, man. I mean, what we got to talk about?
What are we going to talk about? Oh, there's a question in here, and I imagine this is from the captain himself. It says, do you think time travel will ever be possible?
Do we think, or do I, that time travel will ever be possible? Well, it kind of is in the future.
Well, it sort of is, isn't it? If you mean going forward in time, probably not.
Obviously, it means kind of non-linear back and forward in time, right? That's what he's talking about. That's the time travel that you want. You know, go and kill the Hitler's baby, or go and see the birth of Jesus, or mix the two around. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Just swap them, see whether there's any kind of a difference, whether it's nurture or nature. And the answer is kind of maybe, right? It certainly exists within the quantum realm. But however, more interesting question: if it did exist, Matthew Smith, then I reckon that if you were really careful, you could photobomb the Last Supper.
What a brilliant use for time travel that would be, too.
It proves it doesn't exist, because someone would have inevitably done it. And so you go back, just when Da Vinci's posing it all out and that, right? And just stand in the background, do a Brucey, something that'll pop. And then just keep on doing it. And, just every time he does it. And then see whether you make it onto the Sistine Chapel or whatever it was, And so I think that alone not happening indicates that time travel doesn't exist. And so it's a sad thing, 'cause it'd be nice to go back and put things right, wouldn't it? Go and have a look in the future and, do a bit of gambling and betting. But if it did exist, then it probably wouldn't work until the day they turned on the CERN accelerator.
Yeah. Well, I've just got another message from Stephen, because we're doing this animated thing in the studio. He's worried about coming in the room, understandably, because he will mess up our animation. But Stephen, come on in, sir. Come on in.
Well, I think actually, to be honest, maybe
we might be all right. We might be all right. It might just about work. You never know, because you might just sneak on underneath us on the capture screen. But you can't see the capture screen. You see?
I can't see, but Mr. Graham's had a logo before either of us.
There we go. There he is in
I like to
person.
consider it's his logo. Is it
Oh,
your
it's
logo,
worked.
Steve? I can't see it.
No, it's me in person.
Oh, that's
Me in
disappointing.
person. Yeah, I haven't got that sort of logo. God, that was a really weird hour, lads.
I know. It's only going to get weirder as well.
Don't shoot the messenger, mate. That was
Yeah, no, it wasn't me who sent the doodah about the time travel.
Oh, was it not? Oh.
No, because I do know that it does exist because I'm a big fan. So is my son Tom of Back to the Future. So we know it does.
That,
You know it does exist.
It was because I've seen Biff. I've seen him.
Oh, what Trump?
No, yeah, exactly. Exactly. That could be him, couldn't it?
Interesting. Now it's disappeared into the realms of time and space.
Or has it? I don't know. Right, I'm skipping
Right.
around here, looking for a playlist. I must have
Sort it
made
out now.
You must have a playlist there, Steve. Surely.
Sloppy.
Sure.
First time I've been in this room, it's sloppy, man.
There's nothing sloppy about it.
Entertain the nation.
This is extremely professional.
Man of the
I'll have you know.
people, Steve Graham, entertain the nation.
It's not. It's not. He's still got. He's got 40 seconds. We've got 40 seconds.
Oh,
yet to
right,
fill,
sorry,
Raj.
it's still up.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah,
40
it's
seconds.
still-
Yes,
I'm
it's
just
me.
talking
It's
to you.
me. You animated with Stephen sort of at the bottom in actual real flesh.
Oh, that's cool, man. That'd be weird, wouldn't it? A little bit like a primitive Roger Rabbit.
Very primitive, Roger Rabbit.
We should make it. Well, if we want my other idea of having it all virtualised and in the background, Steve can have his own little character, couldn't he?
Well, his logo, his avatar.
Yeah.
Can I have mine just not as anything that's controversial?
None of ours are controversial. Don't
Well,
start.
I'm saying, all I'm saying.
Don't start. No,
All I'm saying.
like
Not
it's
in a
good.
circle.
Turn your phone off. That's really professional,
I
Stephen,
know, I
isn't
just
it?
turned it on. That was Frank Sims from New York. I've just blanked Frank Sims from New York. Jesus Christ, what are you making me do? Anyway, we're going to be out of the time soon, haven't we?
Well, thank the
Yes,
Lord,
we're
hey.
talking. We've got 10 seconds
filling,
left.
man.
Stephen,
Yes.
have a good show,
I'll try.
and
I really will try.
And we'll speak to you later.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ta-da.